Hello, today we'll be discussing the urogenital system, but mostly I'll be focusing on gonadal development. Okay, so what I have drawn is a cross section of the baby. So this is the bottom half of the baby, and we took a cross section of him, right? So in the cross section, we'll see. I'm really assuming that you guys know the basic development, including the trilayers, the bilayer. I'm assuming that you know these layers, and we've already undergone embryonal folding, and now our endoderm is inside, forming our gastrointestinal tract, and our ectoderm is outside, forming the baby's skin. Okay, and remember there was a layer between the endoderm and the ectoderm called the mesoderm. So let me just do this here. So if we did a separation, this is what will happen. We'll have the endoderm, the mesoderm forming all those structures here, and we have the ectoderm on the outside of the baby, okay, or the fetus. Okay, so if we were to look at the mesoderm itself, we know that our mesoderm splits into two or three rather. We have the proximal mesoderm, which is really close. We have the proximal mesoderm, which is really close to the neuronal tube, and it forms basically the baby's skeletal system, muscles, and all that good stuff. And then we have the intermediate mesoderm, is what we see here. The intermediate mesoderm is called the genitoureteral mesoderm, and it's divided into the genitoureteral, meaning it's divided into the genital and it's divided into the urinary. So this part here, the anterior part of the intermediate mesoderm, is where the genital part develops, and just behind it is the urinary developing. So with the urinary, we see that we already have we have our dorsal aorta and we have our little tubules. So we're not going to be focusing on urinary embryology. We'll be focusing on gonadal embryology. So right here we have this little bulge, and this is the gonadal ridge. Okay, this is the gonadal ridge. Remember this is the gonadal ridge, and the gonadal ridge is where we form our ovaries or our testes. So right now I'm just going to zoom in on the gonadal ridge. So if we were to come in here and zoom in on the gonadal ridge, right, this is what we would have. So we'd have this is a cross section of it. So the first thing that happens in the gonadal ridge is that we have primitive or primary stromal cells developing like this. This is called our primary stromal cells. Okay, remember this is a cross section. Now we have our primary stromal cells. Primary stromal cells. And this is where it gets different for both male and female. Okay, so with the male and with the female, so I just want to, and this is where it gets different. We have the male and then we have the female. So I'm just going to draw male like this and female like this. So with the female, these primary sex cords these primary stromal cells that will develop will form the rete ovary. So it's forming a network, right? It's forming a rete ovary. This rete ovary will then degenerate to form new types of stromal cells, called as secondary stromal cells. So this is our secondary stromal cells. Secondary stromal cells. Now, what happens is that now that we have our secondary stromal cells, primordial germ cells, which are the things or the cells that form the ova and the sperms, come in. So this is the primordial germ cells come in at this point. So we have our primordial germ cells. So the primordial germ cells will incorporate themselves into the secondary stromal cells to form primordial follicles. Okay, so we still have our stromal cells, and in those secondary stromal cells we have our primordial follicle. Okay, now remember, each primordial follicle will be a oogonium, and these oogoniums will undergo they will try to undergo division, but they will be arrested in prophase 1 in meiosis 1 until puberty, where they continue their development, and they then begin to arrest in metaphase of meiosis 2, and then that is completed when the ova is fertilized by a sperm. So now let's look at the male. Now the male, the same thing happens with the female. There is a primary stromal cells, but unlike the female, the primary stromal cells do not degenerate. The primary stromal cells remain and form the seminal vesicles, After the seminal vesicles, we have our straight tubules. We have our retitestes after, and it forms the efferent ductules. Okay, so that's what this forms. Okay, so I'll just so here you see we have a diagram of what the primary stromal cells form. So they form the seminal vesicles, the straight tubules. Each of these is a straight tubule, and each straight tubule comes into the retitestes, and then each retitestes drain into these efferent ductules. Okay, and then the epididymis is formed by something else. Okay, so that's what and similarly with the female, the primordial germ cells come in, and then they incorporate themselves into the seminal vesicles, and in those seminal vesicles we have the primordial germ cells, and we have the Sertoli cells. Now, where did the Leydig cells come from? The mesoderm around the seminal vesicles forms the Leydig cells. Okay, so this has been how the testes and the ovary is formed. Now we're going to talk about the general structures, meaning the vas deferens, the vagina, the ovarian tubes, how are they formed.